and then you know you're alive, and you don't have to be afraid of anything, cause you know the truth, and the truth is love, yes it is. Wasn't what they said to you, or anything that you learned from.
Welcome to the Bassline, everyone. Dani Katz is a wordsmith and a word decoder. She is a philosopher and the host of a brilliant podcast. If you tune into the Progressive Radio Network at this exact time of day, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, on a Thursday instead of a Friday, you will be delighted to hear another terrific show, The Dani Katz Show. It is with great excitement that I introduce my station mate, the very clever and very insightful Dani Katz. How are you today, Dani?
Hi, Jeremiah. I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm so glad you took the time to join me here today. Now, first of all, quick correction. Is your show called The Dani Katz Show? What's the name of your show?
It's called Word Up with Dani Katz.
Right. I thought there was a title that I was forgetting. But yeah, Word Up with Dani Katz. It's such an awesome show. Now, before we get into today's exhilarating discussion, I have to say I am a little bit melancholy today, I must admit. I am somewhat sad at the result of the Chess World Championship. It's sort of a long story, but it was a very dramatic match. And it was rather incredible. It was being hosted in Singapore, and I would tune in at like 4 in the morning, fall back asleep, listening to the opening games of each game in the match, wake up in a couple of hours, wake up my son, and at around 7 to 7:45 in the morning, we had the Chess World Championship on in the living room while we were getting ready to go to school. And it was such an exciting match and such an amazing match and such a heartbreaking match for fans of Ding Liren, such as myself. An absolutely genteel figure. I mean, that's what's, I guess, hard seeing Ding lose. Is it's incredible to see a world champion who is not just polite, but extremely humble and I would say genteel in his disposition. And, someone put it best under one of the comments under the video showing his graciously congratulating his opponent after the match. They said something to the effect of, the man who cries when he wins the world championship and smiles when he loses it. We will never know this man's pain. And I hope Ding Liren can bounce back. He's an incredible figure, one of the all-time great chess players that can never be taken away from him, objectively speaking. And also congratulations to now the youngest world champion in history. It was apparently his destiny, Gukesh Damaraju. We are now in a new age of chess. The Indians have won the Chess Olympiad, which was an incredible performance on their part, and now they have the youngest world champion in the history of the game. So congratulations to Gukesh and his team and to the nation of India. I hope Ding can bounce back, like I said. Also, tonight, I'm hosting a Twitter space with Dr. Andrew Zhivjets, a two-time guest of this program, a friend of mine at this point, phenomenal individual, and we are going into the rather unpleasant but necessary discussion concerning gender-affirming care, which I consider to be a gruesome euphemism for child mutilation and chemical castration. But that's tonight on X. Just look up my handle @EarthDriver. I will be hosting the space tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And of course, please support the Bassline Radio Show. You can do that by buying a chess lesson. RemoteLearningChess.com is my company. Please buy a chess lesson for yourself, for a loved one of any age, for a child, for an elder who wants to stay sharp. It's a great way of staving off dementia, Alzheimer's. It's actually a health investment to start practicing chess. It's great for firing up those neurotransmitters. Please check out my latest Substack. There's some great comments under my last article called The Furious Five. Please read the article, share it, and tell a friend about it who may appreciate it. And go to JeremiahHosea.com. Buy the theme song of this show or any number of other songs for $1. It's the season for giving, as they say. So please support my independent journalism. Greatly appreciate it. This is a labor of love, and I would love to get this to the point that this is sort of like at least a part-time job, if not a full-time job. And I would love to get to the point that I'm doing well enough doing this that I can reinvest my earnings in the movement itself. But all that being said, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for supporting this program. And Dani Katz, you have such a phenomenal show. I was immediately captivated by it when I stumbled upon it. I was listening to PRN, your show came on, and I found myself riveted by it and fascinated by every episode I've been able to catch. And it seems like your show covers a wide range of topics. It seems to be about language. It seems to be about the human condition. It seems to be about psychology, philosophy. What is the Dani Katz mission? What are you doing with this incredible work that you're doing? How do you describe it?
Such a good question, and thank you for all your kind words. I think because I do so many things, when push comes to shove, what I'm really doing is helping people claim their own empowerment, claim their own agency, claim their own critical thinking, claim our God-given right to create our lives and our world and ourselves and our societies as we choose. So obviously I tackle that from every possible angle that I can. It's like I throw every noodle at the wall thinking like something's going to work. At some point, humanity is going to take this cue and get it together.
Yeah. I share in your idealism. And that's actually really interesting because it reminds me of me, I have to say. The first album I ever produced, please check it out. Actually, you could check it out at my website, jeremiahhosea.com. It's called No One's Slave. And it seems, just based on what you said, and anyone who knew me over the years would know, I would never, in any under any circumstances, be in support of coercive anything, but least of all coercive medical mandates and coercive behavior on the part of the state. So it was rather shocking when I saw people that I thought to be rebels, people I thought to be critical thinkers at the very least, were just going right along with the biosecurity agenda, and even more surprisingly, resenting those who were not going along with it and were speaking out. So what was if you don't mind, what was your COVID experience in a nutshell? I mean, I know now we're going on 4 years of this, but just kind of give us a synopsis of how COVID changed your world, if it did, which it seems like it changed everyone's world in one way or another. But what was your COVID experience?
Yeah, it definitely changed my world. It definitely has chipped away at my faith in humanity, which is still a tough pill to swallow. So I was, my background is as a journalist. So I started cluing into the globalist agenda after 9/11, as so many of us did, and studying Project for a New American Century, starting to figure out Club of Rome and these like more long-term plans for global tyranny. So when rumblings of what I call FOVID started to emerge, I knew exactly what it was. I'd gotten an intuitive hit in November of 2019, actually October of 2019, where my gut said, get out of LA now, it's about to happen. Like this thing that we've been waiting 20 years for is about to go down, so get out. So it was in November that I moved to New Mexico, and I still wasn't quite sure why. I was just waiting. So when I started to hear the rumblings of it, I knew exactly what was going on. And, I immediately started speaking out. Don't mask up. Don't buy into this. Don't dehumanize your fellow humans, which was my basic message after, it started to see the Me Too stuff and Black Lives Matter emerge, where I was like, guys, this is getting pretty divisive and pretty dehumanizing. Let's pay attention because this is taking us to a dark place. So here in Santa Fe, when I first went my first instance at a grocery store where I wasn't allowed in and had to wait outside, I immediately started railing and just like, this is bullshit. Like, let's not, come on, people. Like, we're not going to go along with this. And I just assumed, like every time I've made a scene in the airport at TSA, that everyone was with me. And I'm yet again shocked when like I was the only squeaky wheel, and watching people in my town bend the knee and muzzle themselves and kowtow to this nonsense. So I was, from the jump, I was railing really hard against it. And then, of course, insert the censorship machine. And I was doing a lot of investigative reporting here on the ground in Santa Fe, which got me banned from the papers for which I used to write. And I was just getting all these doors slammed, and I didn't realize how many smaller and what I thought were independent institutions were all in on it. I didn't realize the extent of the collusion, and I kept thinking, we can shut it down, we can stop this, we can stop this. Then my friend Mickey Willis, with whom I'd worked on a children's health defense vaccine mandate campaign. This was when for the children's schedule. We'd worked together on that in 2019. He reached out to me after Plandemic came out and asked me to come on board to be the lead writer on Plandemic 2. And that was a very balls to the wall project. And again, I just thought, we're going to shut this down. Like, this is great. I'm so happy to have this opportunity to put my investigative journalist skills to work and really be of service. And again, had no idea the extent to which they would go to censor that and keep it out of the public. So I would say the first 2 years were me in this kind of maniacal Mars and Aries, I can stop it, we've got a chance, and doing everything I could, interviewing lawyers here in New Mexico about, our various emergency orders, reaching out to the sheriffs, city council, all of that. And I was really slow. That idealism can be blinding and crazy making. It was really slow for me to realize, I can't stop this. I can't shut this down. And it really wasn't until they installed Biden that I realized, okay, humanity has chosen their enslavement timeline. I need to save my own nervous system and sanity and stop thinking that I'm going to stop this.
Right. Oh, my goodness. I could relate to so much of what you just said right there. So many things come to mind. I spend a portion of every day just trying to figure out what the heck happened. I mean, I don't even recognize the landscape anymore to a large extent. And I wish I couldn't relate to what you said, but unfortunately I relate very much to what you said in terms of losing your faith in humanity to some extent, because I really had lived my entire life with this certain idealism that, underneath it all, we were these good beings who just wanted to be good and wanted to share and wanted to make a better world. And it was just these corrupt elements and just the difficulties of the evolutionary process that were stopping us from getting where we wanted to go. But then a lot of that was frankly shattered in seeing how people were so compliant, for one, so unquestioning, and so willing and able to ostracize others and condemn others for not conforming. That just blows me away. There's so many obvious things, right, just off the top of your head. Wait a second, you're mad at me for not trusting major corporations with felony backgrounds?
Right.
That's not fair. That doesn't make sense. You're mad at me for not trusting the government with its track record. Even just recent history, never mind ancient history, weapons of mass destruction leading us to a catastrophic war in Iraq, just the arbitrary bombing and attacking of all these different countries. I always bring up also the inability to provide potable water to the town of Flint, Michigan.
Right?
If you can't bring potable water to one American town, maybe mass medicating the public is a little bit out of your league. And it sounds to me like an industrial accident waiting to happen, at the very least. But
totally.
Where do you stand in terms of your relationship at this point, your view towards the medical freedom movement? Because I've gotten myself very involved now in the medical freedom movement. I was an activist of various kinds throughout the years, and now medical freedom is central to my activism. And it's something that I really wish I had realized sooner. I wish it wasn't COVID that alerted me to some of this stuff. But I do believe that while we should be fighting for human dignity across the board and in every respect, let's start with the sovereignty of our physical bodies. That's always fundamental, right? Like if we can't say no to medical interventions, we're not free people. And if saying no to those medical interventions also then results in exclusion from society, that's not freedom, that's not human dignity, that's not right. So I really believe that, I think there's a lot to question about the pharmaceutical industry and vaccines in particular. But before we even get into the weeds about the medical and scientific legitimacy of certain practices, I think we first of all need to base our argument and position on our right to say no. I think that's just sacrosanct. But sorry for my little mini lecture. What is your view about the medical freedom movement at this point? Are you involved in medical freedom? What's your perception of it? And what's your involvement level at this point?
Aside from being threatened by various bigwigs at the head of it, I want nothing to do with it. I want nothing to do with any movement in general because I think all movements are psyops. And I mean no disrespect to you as an activist when I say this. I'm not an activist. I'm a journalist and I'm a humanist. So I think all movements are traps because it creates the illusion that I need to fight for something that is unquestionable, unalienable, and given to me by God. So I'm never going to fight for medical freedom. I stand in my claim for medical freedom. I don't legitimize anyone else's claims to take that away from me because it's absurd. And fighting only fuels and empowers that which we are fighting against. That energetic of conflict, very much Power versus Force, Dr. David Hawkins' book, it's only going to fuel and empower the ludicrous idea that a government entity can make a claim on my medical freedom. So I feel like movements are ops in that it makes trends and question marks of God-given rights that aren't even up for discussion. On top of that, I'm heartbroken, I'm confused, I'm disgusted by how many players in the health freedom movement have sold out, and I don't claim to know why, if they're being blackmailed, if they're being paid, but there is so much conflict and infighting within that movement starting back around 2022 or between the virus, no virus people. And, at the time when I was, being told by very, very high profile people in that movement that if I continued to publicly question the existence of viruses or invite people on my podcast who were questioning it, that I would be X'd out of the movement in those conversations, which for me was immediately eyebrow raising because it's like, who are you to tell me what I'm allowed to talk about, who I'm allowed to talk to? And then if we go to problem reaction solution, Hegelian dialectic as to, well, why is there pressure to not question the existence of a virus? Then we find our way to Steve Kirsch, who funds not only most of Children's Health Defense, but is also funding Robert Malone's quote-unquote newer, safer vaccine that I believe will ultimately be mandated. So if we look at why is there so much pressure to not talk about viruses? You look, where's the money, right? Like very basic journalism 101. Well, the money is in the newer, safer vaccines that won't fly if we're actually question the existence of a virus that's never been isolated ever. And the pressuring really escalated to the point where I've had my life threatened by people in the quote-unquote health freedom movement, which in my mind at this point is an insular circle jerk that's just propping up yet another fallacy that will do humanity a disservice.
Wow.
Sorry. Sorry, not sorry.
Yeah, no, I want everyone to just be candid in their views. I don't want anyone to tiptoe around what they feel for the sake of my feelings or anyone's feelings for that matter. I just think we should just be adults and be candid and be frank. I agree with a big chunk of what you're saying there. And I also see the inherent problem of movements, having been a part of, I don't know what you would call the movement I was a part of at this point, as everything has sort of come crashing to the ground through COVID. For example, it's amazing. The activists that I knew, and I won't mention anyone by name here because it's just not worth the effort to do so, but I was a part of an activist organization in college that I continued my friendship with a number of people, a large number of people who, stayed in touch and had that camaraderie from the days of college activism. And, we were folks who, if something happened in some obscure village somewhere in the world, we would be protesting outside of the United Nations the following day. I mean, anytime there was police brutality or imperialist aggression, we were protesting, and I thought it was under the guidelines of respecting human dignity and the dignity and legitimacy of every person. And then I see these same people shunning the vaccine injured, for one, trying to pretend that vaccine injury doesn't exist. And a question I have for all of them, particularly the ones who have cut me off or who I haven't heard from in a while, it's like, okay, you have a critique of the prison industrial complex, and rightly so. You have a critique of the military industrial complex, and rightly so. And you have zero critique of the pharmaceutical industrial complex? Does that make sense? I just don't think that makes sense whatsoever. And I think there's a lot to look at in terms of the corruption and the harm of big pharma, which I now call big harma. Yep. But all that being said, I guess to follow up a little bit, I am, I guess, an admirer of the civil rights movement, for example. As a person of I have blood from every continent in the world except for Antarctica and Australia, but I am a person of African descent as well. And my ancestors suffered in this hemisphere because of that. And, there was a civil rights movement where we fought to be legitimate in society. We fought for the right to vote, the right to exist effectively. So I kind of come from that background that we do have a history of banding together when we need to, and banding together when we need to, and forming, I guess, what you call a movement to make wrong things right. Considering what you just said about not wanting to be a part of a movement, which I totally respect, how do you think we go about getting these tyrants off of our back? How do you visualize that if we can? What's the proper orientation in the face of tyranny, I guess, is my question.
So, my legit answer is I don't know. I always say this is my first global apocalypse, and I'm figuring it out as I go along. I wish people would get off their knees and say no and use their voices and flood. I wish there was a wave of lawsuits against the city council and the mayors of these towns where they push these mandates. And I hear what you're saying about the civil rights movement, and I'm even thinking of first wave feminism as well, and I think there was validity there, but I think the world has changed, and I think a lot of these movements are like kind of shallow optical distractions that don't translate to change. Like here in Santa Fe, pretty much every day there's some protests going on around the Palestine situation at the Capitol, and it's like, what effect do any of these people think this is going to have here in Santa Fe? Do you think anyone here has, the authority to go stop that war? What does justice look like here? I feel like it looks like the people claiming the power that we actually have and unifying and coming together and flooding all of our local governments and demanding change and demanding justice. I don't see any, and I'm curious to know from your perspective as an activist, because I'm certainly no expert, but when have these movements actually affected change here? When was the last time a movement in this country translated to positive change for the masses?
Yeah, that's a great question. In terms of trying to rack one's brain to come up with examples of that. Off the top of my head, for example, to take a fairly contemporary example, there were the anti-World Bank and IMF protests that were happening in the turn of the new millennium. And, that started out, I think, with the Battle of Seattle. And then I attended a big rally that was another pretty massive rally against the World Bank, IMF in D.C. And shortly after that, they stopped meeting in the first world. I think there was some tragedy actually at another meeting in Genoa, Italy, if I'm not mistaken. But at a certain point, they totally exposed themselves and said, you know what? We can't meet in democratic places anymore. We have to hide and have our meetings under the auspices of dictatorships. So they took their meetings to Qatar, where street protest is illegal. How much of an achievement that is, I don't know, but we chased the World Bank and the IMF into the arms of a dictatorship where they revealed, we're not democratic institutions and we will hide behind dictatorial authority to carry out our agenda. I could definitely think of, locally, there were, some really valid protests in the 90s for open admissions to Hunter College and the city college system here. I think that was significant, but I think some of that has resulted ultimately in defeat. I know none of the political prisoners have been released. I mean, some have been released, I guess, over the years, but in general, protested for years for a new trial for Mumia Abu-Jamal. Mm-hmm. Never got a new trial, certainly never released. Leonard Peltier, attacked on his own Native American reservation by FBI agents, jumping bull territory, as they called it. Why didn't one of these wonderful presidents, why didn't Barack Obama pardon him? A Native American man assaulted by the FBI on his own territory, where the FBI opened fire on indigenous people. I mean, yeah, I think you're right. It's not easy to come up with examples where activism was successful. I mean, but there's also examples like we could take, for example, the Vietnam War, other anti-war protests, where the protests were massive. I think they were righteous in their orientation, but we can't necessarily say that they stopped the war machine. I mean, it seems like the war makers pretty much conduct war as they choose to, and they stop when it's not part of their plan at that point, when it's their plan to cease the industries and the actions of war. So, there is that sort of, I don't know what the word is exactly, but that sort of paradox where, we might not make change actually through our very passionate actions, but if we don't say anything, we know we're not going to make any change. So we try to the best of our abilities, and also bearing in mind that we're up against massively powerful institutions in many cases, right? It's like maybe you had all the heart in the world, but your opponent is just too monstrous. There's that fact of life sometimes as well, too.
Yeah. I think my main issue with movements, and you provide some good examples where I do think needles were moved, but I think specifically around medical freedom, the claim that the government makes is to have any say as to what we do with our bodies is so patently absurd, egregious, and offensive that I think to dignify it with a movement is only to legitimize the absolute ridiculousness of it. And I see it, feeling, and empowering it. Just look at the phrase anti-vax movement, right? Anti-vax movement. So it puts us in that oppositional energy to vax. That's what the word anti does. It fuels and empowers anything it modifies by invoking said thing. But the other thing that it does is it normalizes vaccines as our default baseline. And as we know from Yuri Bezmenov's work on ideological subversion, normalization is the fourth and final stage of any tyrannical takeover. So it's one of those reasons like, no, I want nothing to do with the anti-vax movement, and I don't even identify as anti-vax, because if someone wants to inject themselves with genocide, that is their God-given right. as a human with free will, but I have the right to say no, and I'm not going to fight for that right because it's so large and unquestionable that if someone challenges that, instead of fighting them, I see it like a 5-year-old saying, you know, I'm the police officer and you have to do what I say. You're not going to fight with a 5-year-old. You're going to be like, oh, that's so cute, sweetheart, but we're actually not playing that game right now. That's how I feel. I feel like that approach to the government would go a much longer way in safeguarding the freedoms that they have no right to than whatever this is that actually legitimizes their false claims.
Yeah, I have to say, Dani, I appreciate your perspective very much. And I know I'm going to be thinking about this conversation after we're through speaking, because I love what you're saying, and I feel like my own paradigm is being updated as we speak. But I do struggle with some of the things that you're saying, and I can't wait to think about them, honestly. Like, for example, on the subject of anti-vax, I hear what you're saying in terms of not wanting to identify yourself as in opposition to something else. But I've recently, and maybe now I need to take my next step in my evolution, I went from being a person who said, well, I'm not anti-vax, but I think the way these shots are being coerced and foisted upon us is just unacceptable. I don't trust what's happening here. I don't want to be coerced into a medical intervention, et cetera. Then I started finding out more about just how harmful these shots have turned out to be. Then I started finding out that there's actually this kind of dark hidden history of the vaccine industry. And no, it has not been this wonderful little thing. So at that point, I'm kind of at the phase now, and I guess I need to revel in it a little bit more before I transcend it, where I'm kind of proudly anti-vax now. And I guess I don't like being lumped into groups in general. That's true. But I kind of do like siding with outsiders sometimes, or the bad people when the bad people are right, and that's sort of been my angle a little bit recently. My argument is anti-vax equals intelligent. And why is it intelligent? Because it means, well, questioning things. First of all, questioning things that would be injected into your body, the necessity for it, the potential harm inflicted upon you or your family members, your children, etc. The pro-vax position, they've made it so that the anti-vaxxers are the weirdos and the idiots and so on. Well, no, I think that you're actually not very intelligent in saying that we shouldn't discuss these things. And that's my argument at this point, is that it's not a matter of vax versus anti-vax. It's a matter of people who feel that we should be discussing these things that are relevant to our health and the health of our families, and people who are basically censors and want to silence discourse and the questioning of things.
I completely agree with you. And, Neil Z. Miller, who writes all the vax study books, has been a dear friend of mine for many, many years. So I've been clued in for a long time as to how toxic and caustic they are. But again, if you look at the fact that we are in a war, people are waiting for World War III to happen. It already started. It started with COVID. It probably started with Obama. It probably started when they killed JFK. But if we're looking at it as this war, I'm a big fan of safeguarding the linguistic territory. So if we are adopting the language of our would-be oppressors, then they are winning. And that's how I see the anti-vax conversation. I agree with you. In my perspective, if I were queen of the world, then no, we wouldn't have these interventions. But given where society is, there are people who are going to cling so hard if we try to take that away from them. And then where do we draw the line? Are we anti-sugar? Are we anti-lectins? Are we anti-alcohol? Are we anti-television? There's so many things. Are we anti-fluoride? There's so many things that have become normalized in our society that are, in direct conflict to a healthy human life. But every time we define ourselves with this anti-word, we are rooting ourselves deeper and deeper in the paradigm of the problem. And solutions and real deal change don't come from that paradigm, and they don't come from that frequency.
Yeah, I appreciate that perspective very much. And I think it's something that we should all think about and consider deeply. I know it's a huge question. I mean, it's kind of just an unfairly broad question, but considering I find you to be so insightful and to have such an interesting perspective in general, give us some of your insight into what you're perceiving about the modern world writ large. I mean, we're in this new, strange era. We're in the era of the deep fake is one thing, for example. Like now with CGI and just the ability to manipulate videos and images and AI, you can put someone in a crime scene. I mean, soon we're going to have court cases where someone says, that's not me in the video killing 12 people. I know it looks exactly like me, but I wasn't there. And it's going to be a whole new era of digital forensics. I mean, you could take someone's voice or a sample of someone's voice and then make a whole fake auditory statement that sounds exactly like the person. I mean, we're in such a complicated new world with mRNA vaccines and all these other forms of manipulation. What do you perceive about the world at large that you would love to share with just a random audience in a matter of minutes? What sticks out to you?
Oh man, it is such a broad question. It feels like a lot of humanity is very confused, and that unfortunately those who are currently steering our Earth ship are not looking out for the best interests of humanity. So I see it going a couple different ways. Like, I think that humanity is making a mistake right now to take the AI bait and automated and digital and let's get rid of humanity and customer service and sentience. Like, that's all a trap. But my railing hasn't yet seemed to do anything to get people to course correct. So the way I see it is humanity is delving into a very dangerous anti-life experiment that they'll either not survive or figure out and course correct. Like right now, I feel like even though my entire business, everything I do is set up online, I think the best thing for humanity would be for the whole grid to go down, because then people who got stuck on the smart trap, right, can't get into their houses, can't get into their refrigerator, can't get into XYZ, and will hopefully snap out of it before it goes even farther. And I think there's another segment of society that's, vastly smaller, who understands what's going on, and we're extricating ourselves from the matrix. We're extricating ourselves from the enslavement constructs, from the world of legality and false power, and we're going to be setting up, smaller, parallel, analog societies to be able to get through this dystopian nightmare.
Well, that's a phenomenal answer, considering the width of the question. You just took the ball and ran it right down the field. Touchdown. Great comments. Thank you so much. So first of all, everyone, if you'd like to speak to Dani Katz, we'd love to hear from you. The number here, of course, is 888-874-4888, 888-874-4888. Please don't be shy. Last time was the first time ever that our outstanding guest didn't have any callers to speak to. Someone called and held on for a little bit, and then something happened. They hung up. So we had one caller, and they didn't get on the air. But if you'd like to speak to Dani Katz, the host of an exceptional program that appears every Thursday here on the Progressive Radio Network at this exact same time of day, 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. every Thursday, PRN.live, please call right away and get online, and we'll speak to you in a moment. 888-874-4888. But in the meantime, Dani, take your time and tell us every which way that we can follow you, that we can support your work, that we can participate in your work. How do people keep track of what you're doing in general?
Oh, thank you so much for asking. I really appreciate that. So everything is held under the umbrella of my website, danikatz.com. And you can follow me on Instagram at something.Dani. I hear that you
by the way, just so you know, that's D-A-N-I is the spelling of Dani. So D-A-N-I-K-A-T-Z.
Yes, thank you for that. And then through my website, you can get to my Odyssey channel, where I post content every week. I have 2 different podcasts, one that I do solo, which you mentioned and airs here, and another one that I do with Emily Moyer that's like deep, scorched earth conspiracy, and you can find your way to those through my website as well.
Excellent. So, yeah, folks, that is really a goal of this program, is just supporting each other, spreading the word, and amplifying our own and each other's voices. That's what I'm all about. So, I'd really love if you go to that website, forward it to other people. Don't just keep it to yourself like you heard it here over the Progressive Radio Network airwaves. Go text it to a bunch of people. Go use your social media and send it to people on WhatsApp and Facebook and whatever. How angry could they get at you for sharing some information, sharing another resource, another perspective? I'm a big fan of our ability to support each other. So I heard the phone ring in the other room. I'm not sure if we actually have anyone on the line yet. Perhaps not.
I hope so. I promise not to bite.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, guys, it is the Progressive Radio Network, so we'd love to hear from the Progressive Radio Network audience, which is full of astute people and interesting people.
If I may, Jeremiah, I'd love to let the audience know that I just re-released my transformational coloring book called Yes, I Am, which is 444 pages of super inspiring, encouraging, empowering, confidence-building content. I know it's the holidays, and a lot of us have lots of people we love to get gifts for. So I just wanted to let the audience know that Yes, I Am is a wonderful gift for everyone of any ideological inclination, appropriate for kiddos and grown-ups alike.
That's awesome, and I would love to get that for my kids in particular. That sounds like an awesome gift. And I saw some images from it. It looks really beautiful and inspiring and really appropriate for anyone, like you said. So
thank you.
Yeah, please, just support good things, guys. It kind of drives me crazy that we get so animated when we're offended by something, or someone says some little snide remark and we'll go on and on talking about it. Well, how about putting equal energy into supporting people doing good things, and maybe not wasting so much energy being offended and having our feathers ruffled and, worrying about sometimes things that we can't control, and sometimes things that have nothing to do, frankly, with our lives one way or another. If we could just...
I really love that. I love that transference of energy, because there is so much energy that's going into outrage. And if we put even a fraction of it into what's joyful and wonderful, how quickly our world would change.
Yeah, I totally agree. An attitude, a good attitude about what you're doing, it changes everything. I mean, that's what I try to instill in my own children. That's what I try to instill in my students as an educator. Just have a decent attitude about what you're doing and take it from there, because if you're grumpy, you're kind of leaning away from what you're doing, then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy and you don't get a good result. And, well, what a surprise, you didn't get a good result. You didn't have a good attitude going into what you're doing. So are you on X, by the way, at all? Are you on X, Dani?
I am on X. I'm insanely shadow banned there. My username is KATZDANI, my last name and my first name. But I hear these people talking about, Elon is God's gift to free speech and the planet, and everyone should be on their knees praying for how amazing he is. And my reach, which already wasn't great under Jack Dorsey, has been, thoroughly attacked since Elon took the reins.
Yeah, it's an interesting question and issue that you're raising there. I mean, it's so insane that anyone who spoke out against the COVID agenda, and it turns out, actually, I need to go check the article, but I saw an article just yesterday saying, actually, a lot of those doctors promoting COVID injections were literally fake doctors, as I suspected, fake accounts, just legions of fake accounts to create this atmosphere of everyone agreeing on something. Yeah.
Yep.
So the real doctors get censored and the fake doctors get promoted and elevated like the only game in town. But the appearance of Elon then allowed for the reinstatement of all these closed accounts, and people were celebrating that, saying, oh, Elon, the bringer of free speech. Well, you know, free speech was something that we had sort of taken for granted up until this point. He reinstates some people, but there's still, first of all, this algorithm, whatever you want to call it, suppressing certain content clearly. I'm shadow banned as well. I mean, I should have 1 million followers considering the guests that I've had on this program. But, you know, I describe myself as like a super talented musician playing in the subways, just collecting my support 1 nickel, generally 1 penny at a time, you know? But I would love for there to just be that avalanche one day. I'm waiting for the patron who just tosses $100 in my bucket one day, you know, so I could get me a new pair of shoes or something. But so again, folks, I'm surprised no one's calling. I don't think we have a call on the line. 888-874-4888. Please jump in. We have 10 minutes to go. And of course, if you don't call, well, life goes on. We're still going to have a great conversation here, but you're invited to join us. And we always love to hear from the PRN audience. 888-874-4888. So, Dani, in terms of your word theory a little bit, you know, I know like the Rastas have a concept of word sound power, that if you say something, you bring it to life. You should be careful what you say, because you can animate certain energies or certain thoughts or certain realities by simply uttering certain things. I too have my own sort of little personal relationship with words, I guess you could say. I have a personal feeling about different words. For example, I have a theory that certain words are underused. Like a word
like what?
Like the word ignorant. I think ignorant is something that's just very functional, but it really angers people. It's worse than calling someone stupid to call someone ignorant. But ignorant to me just means to ignore. And I think as human beings, we have to ignore most of reality to make it through the day. So don't be so offended by the idea of being ignorant. Actually, it was my father was pointing out, someone made the comment that the Yankee shortstop, the great Yankee shortstop, all-time leading Yankee hitter, Derek Jeter, someone said, Derek Jeter is stupid. And I said, I find that to be a strange thing to say. I mean, he seems pretty on point in general. He's a great winner on the baseball field, team captain or whatever. So I asked my dad, I said, Dad, do you think Derek Jeter is stupid? He said, ignorant perhaps, but stupid definitely not. And I thought that was a good answer in terms of highlighting the distinction between ignorant and stupid. I'm getting messages that people are having problems with the PRN phone number. That's kind of sad.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, that's sad. I'm getting a few text messages saying people are trying to call in and they're not getting through for some reasons.
Well, Mercury is retrograde for any astrology nerds, so we could be dealing with that.
Isn't that fun? I wonder, though, since you know about astrology, do any other planets go into retrograde? Because it's always Mercury in retrograde, and I never...
Oh, they all do.
Oh, really? So we always hear about Mercury, and Mercury is supposed to be the messenger. So I'm like, are we blaming the messenger when we say Mercury in retrograde?
Well, actually, Mars is retrograde right now. So Mars determines action, which is why a lot of our efforts are maybe going sideways right now. But yeah, every planet goes retrograde. And I did want to pick up what you were saying about ignorance, because I feel like calling someone or something ignorant to me is very generous, because it's not stupid. It's just we don't know what we don't know. I've had a lot of friends and some podcasters try to press me to take a stand on Israel, and I always stick with, I'm ignorant. I don't have enough information to be weighing in on this. You know, I feel like there's a lot of leeway in ignorance.
You know, I'm getting okay. I think there are people holding, but yeah, Ryan, I didn't get your text message for some reason. I don't know what's going on. We're having a Mercury in retrograde event. Ryan, who's online? If we have someone,
we have Jean in New Hampshire.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Ryan. Mercury's in retrograde, and I didn't get your text message. So, Jean, thanks for joining us. How are you?
Hi, Jeremiah. Hi, Dani.
Hi,
I'm just
Jean.
calling to say the first time I heard Dani's show was when she was talking about the weaponization of customer service, and I was riveted. It was just so brilliant. You are really a brilliant thinker, and Jeremiah, your show is great. The only thing about Dani, I really wish you took advantage of the fact that you're on live radio on your show so people could interact with you a little bit. It would really be wonderful if we could hear what other people are thinking about what you're saying, as well as being able to interact with you. And I think you're a really good conversationalist with the interviews I've heard you do. And we need models of how we listen to each other. But I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about your theory about the weaponization of customer service.
Sure, and thank you so much for planting that seed, Jean. Honestly, it never even occurred to me to do a live Q&A, so really thank you for planting that seed. I'll feel into that. So the weaponization of customer service is something I talk about a lot. I really feel like it's the issue around which we can unify as Americans because it affects everyone regardless of how we vote. And a lot of what I cover in my podcast is social engineering and the ways that we're kind of like the frog slowly boiling to death, you know, in the pot that like it's happening so slowly we're not feeling it. And so I track the weaponization of customer service and, you know, these giant corporations that no longer offer human customer service, that make us jump through more and more slavey hoops, you know, pushing buttons, moving through different AIs to just be told that we can't be served. I think it's a place where we have a lot of power. We can absolutely vote with our dollars. It just takes us unifying and deciding, you know what, like we're not down with Meta's new user agreements, so we're going to, you know, in one mass collective, delete our accounts. Or we're not down with Zoom not offering phone service to the people who pay for their services, so we're all going to exit this platform. I feel like it's a place where we could actually really move the needle.
That's outstanding. Jean, we actually have a bunch of calls on the line,
Sure.
and unfortunately we won't be able to.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your kind words, Jean. Thank you so much. And
Thank you, Jean.
yeah, thanks for calling, and thanks for the kind words. Harry in Jacksonville. How are you, Harry?
Yes, hi. I'm glad you picked up on my call. Great. I have a slight other way that this medical thing can be looked at. I think. Are you there, Jeremiah?
Yeah. We're running out of time, so go ahead, rapid fire. Hit us with your brilliant ideas. I'm looking forward.
I think it's about the science, and first of all, knowing what the science shows is really showing, in terms of vaccines, in terms of history, in terms of vaccines not being the things the science really show, and I think it does. And Gary just puts out all this science that vaccines don't really work, and things even like smallpox disappeared from changes in lifestyle rather than from a vaccine. The science on autism and as a result of mercury in vaccines and things like that. It's not a matter of attacking vaccines. If there was a good vaccine that came out that really did something good and didn't have any bad things and was made differently, no mercury in it and stuff like that, it wouldn't be objectionable if you're looking for the truth through science. But the important thing is, one, what happened with the COVID thing was there was a complete censorship where science couldn't be put to the mass media. Science could only be put in alternative media. Now we're getting to a point where, so it's not a matter of...
Although I want to say quickly, Harry, we are running out of time.
Okay, I just
here.
want to say quickly, Gary's trying to get Robert Kennedy to be the health in the new administration, because he has the background and everything to really break up the complicity between pharmaceutical industry and with our medical industry, and really prevent this from happening. And Gary's working very hard to get him in.
We have to end the show, actually. So I appreciate what you said.
I hope you understand my comment, and you hope I'm just trying to put in a slight other way to look at things, not in a...
I got you. I will say in response to what you said, well, I agree, and you remind me of my guest. I'm forgetting his name, Dr. Roger Hodkinson. Sorry, forgot his name for a moment. Dr. Roger Hodkinson says we need to rebuild all of these institutions on rigorous scientific grounds. And I agree with that. But before we get to that, I must adamantly assert my right to say no. N-O, which I insist is the most important word. And, sir, I have to end the show, please. I have to end the show here. Can't go back and forth here because we're out of time. But before we even get to any sort of technocratic explanation as to why my rights or anyone's rights can be violated, first it has to begin with my right to say no, and everyone's right to say no and not be challenged after saying no, but to have no respected and appreciated. Otherwise, we get into a technocratic explanation as to why our rights could and should be violated. But we're out of time, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. And Dani Katz, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the work that you do. I hope we can collaborate on something in the future. I'm truly impressed and fascinated by all that you're doing.
Thank you so much, Jeremiah. I would love that, and thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed our conversation, and thank you for all your great work in the world.
Thank you. I just followed you on Twitter.
Thank you.
All right. Have a great weekend, everyone. Keep fighting the good fight. Take care.
You feel the warmth of the